Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Bonita Varga, and I'm a knowledge broker with the Mental Health Commission, and I'll get the pleasure of being your host today. For our regular participants, I just wanted to let you know that your usual host, Sam Kolopak, has actually accepted an HR position with the City of Calgary, where she's going to be implementing psychological health and safety and aligning their practices with the standard. So a big congrats to Sam. So because of this transition, coupled with the summer holidays, the Commission has actually opted to cancel the July Workplace webinar. So we'll resume monthly webinars again in August, but that's just a heads up that the July webinar has been canceled. And on that note, I'd like to get started for today. So today I'm joined by Lisa Lueken and Erika Wahlstrom. So welcome, Lisa, and welcome, Erika. So Lisa is the Human Resources Advisor at the Mental Health Commission of Canada. She's been working at the Commission for just over a year and a half. As the HR Advisor, Lisa is responsible for providing general human resources support to the Commission and contributing to the delivery of overall HR strategy. Lisa has a key role in the development and implementation of HR practices and programs in areas such as recruitment and onboarding, benefits, performance management, employee relations, policy development, HRIS management, and physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness. Sounds like she's busy. Erika is the HR Advisor of Health, Safety, and Wellness at the Commission. She's been with the Commission for the past 4 years and has previous experience at the Health Canada, where she primarily worked on the development and implementation of the competency-based management system for the Alberta region. As the HR Advisor of Health, Safety, and Wellness, Erika is the key resource for developing and managing all aspects of the Commission's wellness plan and framework, as well as contributing to the HR strategy. In addition to this role, Erika provides guidance and project management leadership to the Physical and Psychological Health and Safety Wellness Committee on areas such as standard implementation, adherence to occupational health and safety legislation, and she ensures best practices are maintained throughout the rollout of the Commission's wellness planning cycle. So thank you both for being here today. Today we'll be discussing the implementation of the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety here at the Commission. I'd like to take a minute to walk us through our agenda for today. So first, we'll be looking at the organizational profile, strengths, and challenges of the Commission. We're going to look at our approach to a standard. We're going to look at MHCC's framework. We're also including some tools and templates for you, the listeners, and at the end we'll field some questions. So just a few housekeeping items for you today. A quick reminder to please ask your questions by typing into the chat box on the right of your screen. Send your questions to all participants or they may not be answered. If we don't get to your question, you can always email us and we'll respond to you individually. The Commission has been implementing this webinar series on the standard since last July, so we're actually coming up on our 1-year anniversary. The National Standard was developed as a voluntary tool for everyone, including both employees and employers, whether or not they live with a mental illness. As Louise Bradley, the Commission's CEO, discussed with us back in January, the standard is a central component of the mental health strategy for Canada, which calls for strong organizational leadership, a comprehensive approach to promote mental health, and reduce stigma surrounding the mental health problems and illnesses. You should remember that the standard does not discount the work that employers are already doing. Instead, it provides a comprehensive framework to ensure best return on investment. We're implementing this standard at the Commission too, and as many of you have been asking, you're curious about what we've been doing. So today, Lisa will start off by talking to us about our organization's profile, and then she'll walk us through our approach to the standard. All right, Lisa, so take it away for us.
Funded by Health Canada and have a 10-year mandate from 2007 to 2017. The Commission's work includes the country's first mental health strategy, working to reduce stigma, advancing knowledge exchange in mental health, and examining how best to help people who are homeless and living with mental health problems. Of course, the Commission is also engaging in activities to advance workplace mental health. And our organization consists of just over 80 employees. These employees work out of our office in Calgary and our office in Ottawa. We also have about a dozen who work remotely across Canada. So as the Commission led the development of the standard, we have taken on our responsibility to walk the talk and be the champion of the standard. Internally, our President and CEO, Louise Bradley, has been our own champion of the standard, and our Human Resources Department has been tasked with the implementation of the standard. Our HR team here consists of 4 people. You already know now of myself and Erika and our positions. In our department, we also have the Director of HR and our Payroll and Benefits Coordinator. Each member of our HR team has been involved and contributed to our implementation of the standard here at the Commission. And the standard has guided the HR department's programs and practices since early 2012, which, yes, was before the standard was officially released. And we have been working towards optimizing mental health in our workplace since 2010.
I think that's important information for us all to remember, so thanks, Lisa. Now I'm wondering if you'd be able to walk us through some of our organizational strengths.
Yes, definitely. So we did have a number of strengths right off the bat to harness to make the process a bit easier, but we also did have some challenges to overcome. So as you said, first I can just talk about the Commission's strengths and how we were able to utilize them. So first and foremost, we had the buy-in and support from our senior leaders right from the start. As was previously mentioned, we have our President and CEO as our internal champion of the standard. We do acknowledge that this alleviates some work around internally selling the standard to the leaders, which could be a large barrier for many other organizations that they first have to overcome. Second, just due to the nature of our organization, our employee group is already very passionate about mental health. So again, we haven't had to work as hard as some of you maybe have at getting people to buy into the standard. Because we have that support from our senior leaders, we have had resources available to us to assist with the implementation of the standard. Our HR team has changed over the course of the last 2 years. The team previously consisted only of a director and a single HR advisor. But with the progression of implementing the standard and an increasing focus on physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness, our HR team has increased, and some of the positions have been altered to support these new initiatives. And lastly, we were able to get a bit of a head start due to the Commission's involvement in the development of the standard, as was previously mentioned. And to complement this, when we first were looking at the standard and were gathering information, we found that there were already a number of things that we were doing that were in alignment with the standard. However, I would argue that it's just good business sense to be considerate of employees' psychological health and safety. So many other organizations probably already have programs and policies in place that are also aligned with the standard.
So it sounds to me like the Commission had a lot going in its favor to help implement the standard. But on the flip side, could you speak to some of the challenges that we faced as an organization?
Sure. So you may think that the implementation was easy for us, especially after going through all of those strengths. But we did also face a number of challenges along the way. And as I go through these, you may find that you have faced similar issues in your own organization. So first is the small size of our organization that can prove to be a bit of a challenge. As I already mentioned, we have only about 80 employees, and we are also a not-for-profit. So this means we're not a big, large private enterprise with a bunch of money to spend, so we have had to stick within our budget restrictions. This has limited our ability to provide certain things to employees, such as certain benefits or more elaborate training programs. And as a result, we've looked towards those initiatives that don't incur a high cost. Next, as the Commission was established in 2007, we're still a very young organization. As a result, we were in a position where a number of foundational pieces related to health and safety, just in general, without even going into the psychological side, still did require some work. So we used this gap we had in physical health and safety as an opportunity for us. And when we were filling those requirements or gaps in physical health and safety, we simultaneously included aspects of psychological health and safety and aligned ourselves with the standard that way. Another challenge is having limited employee data. Again, as a young organization, we don't have a long history of data to refer to, and the historical data that we do have is limited. This made it difficult during the planning stage, as it was more difficult to objectively prioritize what actions we were going to take. And this is a challenge we continue to face. Fortunately, we do have other information, such as surveys and risk assessments, that we use in conjunction with the data to help with our planning and our evaluation processes. Now, then, opposing the fact that we're a young organization is the additional challenge of our mandate ending in a few years. At this time, we hope that the work of the Commission will be able to continue, but as we don't know what the future will hold, we have to work with an expected end date of 2017. And this has caused us just to be very cognizant of the timelines of our initiatives and has pushed us to prioritize our work so that our initiatives are the ones that are really going to make a difference in our workplace. Now, continuing on with challenges we faced in implementing the standard is the geographical separation of our employees. Our offices are across the country from each other, and for some of our employees, their supervisor is not in the same location as them. In addition to that, we do have our remote employees that are scattered across Canada that we're also trying to engage. Fortunately, technology nowadays allows us to connect everyone across the country and made this process a lot easier. Having the offices in different locations does complicate HR programs and our policies, as there's different provincial laws, different office settings, and even different office cultures that become factors for consideration. However, I do think that in every organization, regardless of your location, you are dealing with diverse employee needs, and office location simply is one additional factor among many to consider throughout our planning, implementation, and evaluation of the standard. And lastly, the final challenge we had, which I'm sure some of you have experienced as well, is simply the practical issues of getting started. This standard, as you all know, is still very new, and this has been as much as a learning process for us as it has been for all of you who are also looking at implementing it. And with each new item we implemented, we did have to spend some time thinking about exactly how to incorporate psychological health and safety, as it just hadn't been done before. So today we hope to alleviate some of those challenges you may be facing with getting started, as we'll share with you some of the items we've developed that you can use as tools to take back to your organization.
Thanks so much, Lisa. So now, Erika, since Lisa's provided us with a bit of an overview, can you please walk us through the Commission's Wellness Framework?
Yes, so the image in front of you outlines the wellness framework the Commission developed in response to implementing the standard. In the next few slides, I will be going over each stage, including what information we gathered and the work we completed since 2012. Our framework is a 5-stage continuous improvement cycle, and this cycle takes approximately 2 years to complete. I realize this might be a little lengthy for some organizations, but for us, it allows adequate time to implement programs and evaluate afterwards. Keep in mind, though, that we do collect various data and do mini evaluations during that 2-year time period. You will notice that in the middle of the circle, I have listed communication, employee engagement, and leadership commitment. And these are foundational elements that we incorporate all throughout each stage where possible. These three elements, as you've likely noticed, are ingrained all throughout the standard, so we felt very much that it was essential that we highlight these, and we are always considering ways to involve staff, ensure leadership is informed, and that we communicate as effectively as we can. It is important to note, though, that we are learning just as everyone else who's calling in, but we are always looking at our approach and ways in which we can improve and work more effectively going forward. You will also notice a box outside of the circle named Define, and this is the stage where we built the framework, which I will discuss further with you in the next slide. So in the next slides, I will be going over the work we've done in more of a story type of format, because that's essentially what this is. This is our story of implementing the standards since 2012. But as Lisa mentioned, we've been working towards mental health initiatives in the workplace since 2010. So we have had a number of years to work through this and really consider our approach. At first, it seemed like we were just spinning our wheels. We really were not sure where to start implementing the standard and who had overall responsibility for the work. So it was with this that we decided we needed a methodical plan to guide the implementation of the standard, what we wanted to achieve, and how we can make it into a continuous improvement process. So it took almost a year to define the work, create the wellness framework, which was on the previous slide and also listed at the top of this slide, and develop our first wellness plan. But in the end, it was worth the while to spend the time up front and know what it was we wanted to accomplish and how we wanted to accomplish the work. So the key first step was to obtain leadership support and determine commitment levels. Of course, to our advantage, we had a high level of leadership support. But also critical was to ensure that we were all on the same page with what implementation would ultimately look like, what the leadership responsibilities would entail, and what the time commitment within our HR department and our staff would be. We also had two committees, one physically focused and concerned primarily with occupational health and safety requirements, and the other dedicated to psychological health, safety, and wellness. This really was not going very well for us at the start, and there was a lot of confusion as to who would be doing what work and what work was physical, what was psychological, and how the two committees could combine efforts and collaborate. So it was with this that we realized how integrated physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness is, that we decided to create a combined committee, which has since been functioning quite well. I would suggest that if you do need to operate as two separate committees in your organization, which I'm sure a lot of you might, that the roles and scope of the committee are clearly defined and understood, since that definitely was a significant hiccup that we experienced. Next, we felt it was important to define a vision for what we wanted to achieve, and we accomplished this through the establishment of our wellness framework. We also developed a policy statement, which is posted on our website, so you can reference that document. The statement outlines the Commission's responsibilities and commitment to overall health, safety, and wellness. Within the framework, we also determined roles and responsibilities for everyone at all levels of the organization, since implementing the standard to us is a shared responsibility of all staff. We also needed to determine what resources we had available. So that includes the people resources for completing this work, any financial resources we might need, and how we would go about engaging the committee and other staff. With this, a role dedicated to implementing the standard was established, which is my role as the HR advisor of health, safety, and wellness. And my responsibilities are to develop the framework, guide the committee, and ensure that we are meeting our set deliverables. So after developing the framework and having a clear vision of where we wanted to go, we began the process of collecting information. The information that informs our programs, keeping in mind that we take an integrated approach to physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness, is occupational health and safety legislation, standard recommendations, employee survey results, a risk assessment of workplace hazards, and organizational data such as what you see on the slide. So that would be benefit usage, various employee leave, turnover rates, overtime, and safety reports. As Lisa mentioned earlier, this was and does continue to be a challenging area for us. We did not have a lot of robust data to work with initially, and as a small organization, it can be difficult to collect detailed data from service providers, so we really did not have much of a baseline to begin with. Because of this, when we first started the process in 2012, we decided to conduct focus groups to obtain more information, specifically on the 13 factors listed in the standard. This was a lengthy process and time-consuming, but it did help to pinpoint some areas that were working well and not so well. As for risk assessment, we carry out the same process as you would for occupational health and safety legislation, but we include psychosocial risks within that, which as an example might be organizational change, work overload, or even the absence of psychological supports in the workplace. If you are interested, there is a template risk assessment posted on our website as well.
Hi, Erika. I'm just wondering, the standard mentions that, quote, the organization shall establish and sustain processes to ensure confidentiality and privacy rights are protected. What's been your experience with maintaining confidentiality, and has there been any issues with this?
You know, we haven't experienced any issues that I know of with maintaining confidentiality within our approach. We just started to provide quarterly metrics to staff, but the information that we share is all aggregated data, so no one can really be identified, even with being a smaller organization. I think the key here is that you're always considering and communicating employee confidentiality and how to protect their identity with any new policy, program, or process you develop. Also important is that you start to build that trust and respect with your staff, that situations will be responded to appropriately in a timely fashion, and that only the necessary parties are involved.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Erika. That was a great answer.
So for this next slide, after gathering all the information possible, we then reviewed it to identify any themes, and there certainly was identifiable themes. Work overload was a significant issue. Data collection was an issue. We had occupational health and safety requirements that we needed to focus on, and we needed to look at increasing mental health and general health and safety competencies with our staff. So from here, we took the themes and identified priorities and recommendations to bring to the executive level for further discussion and ultimate approval. We also took the data and shared the themes at the management level to build consensus as well, to obtain their feedback in case we might have missed any significant actionable items to include. What works well for us with this approach is that we're not basing our decisions off of one type of data, but that we're looking at what the whole picture is telling us. After the recommendations were shared at the executive and management levels, we then began the process of creating our wellness plans. The wellness plans are work plans developed each year, and this is where we put our priorities into action and identify clear initiatives, resourcing needs, timelines, and what data and outcomes would demonstrate success. Each year, the work plans are developed and shared at the executive level before the work is carried out. Next, we've broken down the specific work we've implemented into two sections. I will be going over our 2012 plans, and Lisa will discuss the work completed in 2013. Year one could be looked at as a foundational year for us. To be quite honest and to be very frank, it certainly wasn't an exciting year of work, but it was important work that needed to be done and would pave the way for the work that we would need to complete in the future. We realized we did not have the best data tracking process, and so with this, and this was already mentioned a few times, was key as the information really guides our future work and also determines the progress we make along the way. So a lot of time and effort was concentrating on implementing an effective human resources information system. Since we have employees spread across the country, an online data tracking system really was our best solution. We also looked at more time off benefits available to employees as well, and so we approved time off between Christmas and New Year's for staff. This was preferred and appreciated by our staff because everyone was away at the same time and did not come back from the holidays with an abundance of emails and work. So it felt like time away from work without the guilt of feeling like you needed to catch up afterwards. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we established a combined physical and psychological committee, and essentially we just follow the same practices that you would need to for occupational health and safety legislation, only we include a psychological component as well. We realize others would experience discomfort with this approach, but again, we found it to be much more effective for us. Next, if you take a look at our job postings, which I believe we have a couple up on our website now, you will notice that we include psychological and physical demands in our descriptions. This is meant to be as transparent as possible as to the type of working conditions you would expect coming into that position and whether or not the role expectations would be compatible with you. The last item I wanted to mention on this slide is that we developed committee action plans, and a draft action plan is located on the website as well. On a yearly basis, we work with the committee to develop their action plan, and it is aligned with the priorities within our wellness plan each year. So the two action plans really go hand in hand, and it makes it much clearer for the committee to know what they've accomplished each year and how their work impacts the wellness plans and the overall organization.
Wow, Erika, it sounds like you guys have been really busy at the Commission. I'm wondering if you can walk us through a few of the policy statements and tools that you just mentioned.
Absolutely. And you know what, Benita? We have been very busy, and in fact, I have a nice, long, and warm vacation plan in the next couple months. So, of course, there are a few items here that I wanted to highlight, especially since they're posted on our website for everyone to use. So the first example I am showing is our policy statement. There is only a snapshot here, but the entire document is on our website. As I previously mentioned, we developed what we call a physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness policy statement, which includes the Commission's commitment and responsibilities with respect to standard implementation and meeting occupational health and safety requirements. Here we outlined our financial and legal obligations, available resources, and dedication to the Commission's wellness framework. This document was first developed by our committee. It's reviewed annually and approved by our executives and our board as well. So the next slide is a snapshot of our health leave policy, and I should correct myself as this one I don't believe is on the website. As one of the initial first steps, we looked at our leave policies and how we could augment them to include more psychological health and wellness principles. We combined our sick leave and personal family appointment leave into one policy called health leave, which includes time off for caregiver responsibilities, personal or family medical appointments, significant events, and sick leave purposes. And this allows employees the flexibility to take time off of work to meet their own specific needs. We do not have a short-term disability program, so this was a way for us to somewhat bridge the gap between the health leave and long-term disability. So in addition to this revision, we also added an additional mental health and wellness days. So we went from 1 to 2 days, and these days are designed specifically to allow time off for mental health and overall wellness purposes. And lastly, we developed a competency framework outlining the core organizational and leadership competencies required of staff. In front of you, you see specifically our health, safety, and wellness competency, and there is a proficiency level assigned for each, the executive, supervisor, and employee levels, and the expectation is that staff will either meet or work towards the minimum set competency levels. What I like about the competency framework is that it sets the stage for minimum behavioral expectations. And so what I mean by this is that the competencies are included in our job postings. We then assess the competencies in our interviewing process, And the competencies are then included in our performance review process, evaluated each year for each employee, and in turn better able to identify any gaps in training requirements for staff. So that includes the 2012 year for us, and I'm now going to hand it over to Lisa to talk about 2013.
That's great, Erika. Lisa, can you discuss some of the items that were completed in our second year of implementing the standard in the workplace?
Yes, so here on the slide you'll see a number of items we implemented last year, which I'll go through in a bit of detail. Starting with this past fall, we implemented our wellness spending accounts as a new benefit to all of our employees. And this benefit allows employees to submit claims for fitness and wellness-related expenses, such as gym memberships or fitness equipment or classes. And this new benefit was implemented as a response to employee feedback that demonstrated a strong interest in coverage for these types of costs. So this ties into the standard just to demonstrate that we did listen to our employee concerns and shows that they, in fact, are able to influence our workplace. And it also promotes physical health, which, as I'm sure we all know, contributes to our psychological health. Another item is there were 2 training courses provided last year to increase our staff's competency that Erika explained on psychological health and safety. And all staff participated in the training course that was titled Understanding and Addressing Workplace Bullying. And then we had a separate training for all supervisors that they attended, which was on emotional intelligence. Another item that's just continuously been emphasized is our approach to health and safety as a whole, shifting to intertwine physical and psychological health and safety. You are likely familiar with health and safety management systems, which are the process put in place to minimize risk of injury or illness in the workplace. And our management system now covers both physical and psychological health, safety, and wellness. This means that when we're identifying, assessing, and controlling risks in the workplace, and when the committee is going through those processes, it's a consideration of both the physical and psychological risks. So those are a number of the changes, and we've also made some changes to our incident accident reporting form. We've revised and implemented some of our policies, and we have established mental health first aiders in our offices.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I'm wondering if you would mind walking us through some of those resources. And I'm just going to take this time to reiterate that these templates and policy statements are available for everybody who's logged in right now on our website. So you can find them on the National Standard page on the MHCC website, and I believe Lori's going to be able to share that in the chatter boxes.
So yeah, one of our major items that I can share with you that was implemented in the last year was our incident and accident reporting form. And the purpose of this form is for employees to report when a health and safety incident or accident occurs while at work. So our incident and accident reporting form incorporates psychological incidents and accidents on top of the general physical occurrences. Many organizations likely already have a process in place for reporting physical accidents through a similar type of a form, and many organizations would have processes in place for reporting psychological incidents, whether that be within an anti-harassment policy or workplace violence policy and procedures. So what we did in implementing this incident and accident form is simply merge all of these available reporting processes into one succinct reporting process. So in doing this, again, it allows us to be aligned in how we're looking at physical and psychological health and safety, really looking at them both together. So this is just a portion of the form, and as mentioned, you can see the full version on the website. But some examples of types of psychological incidents that can be reported include verbal abuse, psychological abuse, bullying, or harassment. So having this formal process in place for reporting these incidents serves just to reassure employees that their concerns will be taken seriously, as all reports are investigated to determine a way to resolve them. And it does depend on the nature of the situation, so our investigations can range from a more lengthy formal process to just quick informal investigations. And going back to something discussed earlier, the details always remain confidential. And for us in the HR department, this form and our reporting process also serves the purpose of streamlining our documentation and tracking of any events that occur to help with our evaluation and planning processes. This reporting process and form has been in place for less than a year now, so we're just continuing to work towards ingraining it as a part of the culture of our organization.
And Lisa, I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about unsafe work.
Sure. So another example here is our right to refuse unsafe work policy. So this is just one example of how with each new policy we introduce into our workplace, we ensure to be conscious of incorporating psychological health and safety wherever is relevant and wherever is possible. So health and safety legislation regarding the right to refuse generally speaks only to work that is physically unsafe. So we just went above and beyond that and incorporated psychologically unsafe work. Here on this slide, you can see a portion of the policy that includes a definition that defines unsafe work. So that's work that is physically and or psychologically unsafe. And our definition of unsafe work includes situations where the employee believes that the work is likely to cause significant psychological harm, which includes work where harassment, discrimination, and or workplace violence has a pattern of occurring or a high risk of occurring. Our procedures for handling work refusals are the same, regardless of it being related to a physical or a psychological safety concern. And this policy also connects closely with our incident and accident reporting process, in that our goal is that any safety issues are reported and addressed earlier by means of submitting an incident report, meaning that our goal is that nothing should get to the point of actually requiring employees to apply their right to refuse, but for them to know that they do have that right.
Thanks, Lisa. Now, earlier you also mentioned mental health first aiders. Now, I'm actually pretty new to the commission, but I understand that all staff are able to take mental health first aid training. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely all staff are able to take mental health first aid training. And for those of you unfamiliar with mental health first aid, it's a training program aimed to improve mental health literacy and provide skills and knowledge to help people manage potential or developing mental health problems, whether it be in themselves, a family member, friend, or a colleague. And the program teaches people how to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental health problems, provide initial help, and guide that person towards appropriate professional help. So it's of the same nature of first aid, except it's for mental health problems. And all of our employees are, as I mentioned, eligible to take mental health first aid training. Approximately 85% of our employees are certified. And in addition to that training, what we have now is specifically designated individuals in each of our offices to act as mental health first aiders for our employees. So again, much like having designated first aiders in your office, these are the people that are designated to provide immediate aid in any type of crisis situation. So from here, I'll turn things back over to Erika just to chat a bit about our process for evaluating our implementation of the standard.
Okay. So again, our wellness framework runs on a 2-year cycle. We do, of course, continuously collect data and obtain feedback on initiatives on an ongoing basis. As for the framework specifically, when it comes time to determine how we're doing, we conduct planned audits. So far, we've only conducted one audit, and that was done this past year. We used the auditing tool located in the standard, and the completion of the audit was a collaborative effort between the Human Resources team and our committee. For the most part, we use the standard as is, but we know of other organizations who have made minor tweaks to the document, for instance, including a scale rather than yes or no answers, and also including management in the audit discussions. This stage is an opportunity for us to gauge how we're doing, what the challenges were, and where we succeeded most. When we make any appropriate, we then make any appropriate changes to our wellness framework and continue the cycle over again.
So Erika, when you conducted the audit, what were some of the things that you found the Commission was doing really well?
Yes, so we did apply to Excellent Canada's, sorry, Benita, can you, repeat that question for me?
Yeah, when you conducted the audit, what were some of the things you found that the Commission was doing well?
Yes, so when we conducted the audit, there were a few items that stood out for us. One being our wellness framework. It's outlined all the employee responsibilities, outputs, accountability for HR and executives, and how we conduct the continuous improvement cycle. So that really did touch on a number of recommendations under the standard. Another key item was that we secured dedicated resources to completing this work. So that would be myself in my role, the committee, and even HR, and ensuring that we have the adequate resources, whether that would be financial or people, to carry out the work. The last key item was engaging staff in a lot of work. For some work, we went directly to staff for their input, especially if they had expertise in a particular area, committee involvement, and understanding of how their work fits into the overall picture. And even our survey response rate at a fantastic 98%, because that is certainly a great representation of what our staff are thinking and feeling.
Great. Now, Erika, I also understand that MHCC received a Silver Excellence Canada Award. Could you walk us through this process, and what does it mean for MHCC?
Yes, so we did apply to Excellent Canada's Mental Health at Work Award and their Progressive Excellence Program. The Mental Health at Work criteria is closely aligned with the standard requirements and also the 13 factors. So it was a good way for us to determine where we've had success in the past, what continues to be a challenge for us, and it was just a neutral outside opinion as to how to practically improve going forward. It is a fairly rigorous process, and they do look closely at the programs and policies the organization has in place, and they also conducted focus groups with our staff. So last year when we engaged in this process, we did, as you've mentioned, receive that silver level recognition. If you are just starting to implement the standard in your workplace, or you're looking for another opinion on the work you've done, you may want to consider the Mental Health at Work Progressive Excellence Program to guide you along the way. Look at what you're already doing that's towards implementing the standard, and providing you with tangible advice to move forward on.
Awesome. So I guess next year at the Commission we're going to be looking for that gold standard?
Absolutely.
So what are MHCC's next steps?
So we just started our second cycle at the beginning of 2014, and we've approved new priorities and a new work plan for this next year, which will then be communicated to staff in the next few weeks at our next staff meeting, in fact. We initiated the process with a recent employee survey where, again, we achieved that great 98% response rate. As for communicating the plans with employees, the most effective approach we take is that we cascade the information from the executive level to management and lastly to staff. We are, though, always looking at ways to improve our communications. As you are likely aware, this can be a tricky area to balance in the sense that you don't want to be overloading your staff with too much information, but at the same time, you want to ensure that they are informed. We may deliver some messaging through internal emails or presentations. We might leave it up to the manager to communicate with their staff, or we may just post materials on our internal site or around the office. The approach we take all really depends on the gravity and importance of the information that's being shared and whether the message needs to be very consistent when it's delivered to staff. And as for going forward, we really are just building on the foundation we've established and continuously looking to augment the programs and the policies that we have in place. Also with this, we are beginning to consider more health promotion practices and activities as well. So hopefully it was clear to everyone listening in that 2012 was a year where we set the stage, made sure we had the tools, the foundation, and the information we needed. 2013 was a year where we started to enhance a lot of our policies and our programs and also offered training to staff. Then going forward into subsequent years, we will then be looking at building more programs such as more effective health management and return to work practices, new training opportunities, and working with our service providers to provide services that better promote a physically and mentally healthy workplace. So our strategy really is to try and keep the work simple, not to overcomplicate our approach, and to just slowly start to put the building blocks together in a way that makes sense for the needs of our organization.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Erika. I think what really strikes me about all of this is that this is an ongoing process for the Commission. It's not something that you guys were just able to sort of implement and it runs on itself. As an employee, I've got to say I really appreciate that this is something that you guys are really investing your time in. So I'm definitely interested to see how the policies and programs evolve as the needs of our organization and staff change, so thank you. Now, it looks like we've got some time for questions. And the first couple of questions I want us to take are questions that were presented by our participants prior to registration. So the first one I'm going to hand over to you, Lisa. And the question is, what are things to consider when looking for inexpensive ways where we can build the standard into our workplace?
Well, one of the things we've done is whenever we've been implementing new policies, or if we have a policy that requires revision, because that's being done anyways, just look to see how psychological health and safety can be incorporated. Like I said, you're doing the work on the policy anyways, so to add the psychological component in it. And then obviously just make sure that you are following through with whatever policies and procedures are being listed. The other thing is you can go to your benefits provider. So if you already have somebody, whether it be just your group medical plan or an employee and family assistance program, and see what they already have available that you may be able to take advantage of, maybe some training options you might be able to use. And those could be things that are already, available for you without any additional cost or limited cost.
Great, thanks so much, Lisa. So the second question I'm going to pose to you, Erika. What are one or two things that could have the greatest impact? Basically what people want to know is where is the low-hanging fruit?
So one item that strikes me in particular is to provide training and education to staff on mental illnesses and the impacts it can have on your work and the skills to recognize but not diagnose mental health issues in yourself and others. Knowledge is power, and this allows everyone within the organization to have a general base level understanding of mental health. Another important note to consider is that whatever program or initiative you put in place, that you ingrain it within your workplace culture and continuously look to reinforce and capitalize on your efforts to create a mentally healthy workplace.
Great, thanks so much, Erika. I've got to say, we've seen a lot of chatter on the chat boxes today. It's been a really engaging group. Erika, I'm wondering, was there anything in the chatter that you wanted to speak to specifically?
Yes, so there were a few questions that came up, it looks like, about health leave, wondering whether or not they're paid, how they work, and just wondering more about the 18 days. So I will clarify that for you. Health leave is essentially sick leave. We just called it health leave instead to encompass all of the other responsibilities, I suppose, that could come up in your day-to-day living. So that would include those caregiver responsibilities, even appointments for your family. So what we wanted to do with this is, instead of specifically saying it's sick leave, we wanted to allow our staff the time to take time away from work to do the things that they need to do to ensure the health of themselves and for others in their life, because really your family does have an impact on your living as well. And so that's what health leave is really all about for us. As for the 18 days, it's just, again, about 18 sick days. And we wanted to be able to bridge that gap between the sick leave, if you will, and also between long-term disability. So we don't have that short-term disability in our plan. So that was a bit of a challenge that we needed to work through. I also saw another question come out about asking whether or not we've seen any employees, I guess, abuse the system. And so far, I would say that we haven't seen any abuse there. And in fact, we actually have a low number of health leave days used last year. If an employee is away for an extended period of time, or if you start to see a trend in their absences, so they're gone quite frequently, it's only 4 months into the year and they've used a healthy amount of that health leave already, well, that's time for the supervisor to be paying attention and to interject, and also for HR to also be involved in that at that time as well. So if the supervisor were to interject, essentially what they would be doing is pulling that employee aside, seeing if there is something happening that they can assist with, and if there's any support that we can offer to that employee.
That's great, Erika. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to speak to?
Yes, there was just, I think, 2 other questions. Somebody asked about, wanted more clarification around our wellness account. I know it was answered in the chatter, but I'll just go into that in a little bit more detail. So as for a wellness account, employees are offered about $500 each year. It does not carry over into the next year. And what we did a little bit different for the wellness account, which I suppose you could call it a no-cost type of idea, is that instead of just using the wellness account for physical health-related things like gym memberships or shoes, equipment, things like that, we also expanded it to include things like art classes or dance classes, or things that really do contribute to your mental health as well. So we didn't want to be overly prescriptive with that account. And another question that we received is how long did each phase of MHCC's wellness framework take? So again, as I mentioned a few times, it is a 2-year process for us. So when we gather the necessary information that we need, keep in mind that's when we do an employee survey. You might do focus groups. You start to gather your metrics that you need. You're looking at that occupational health and safety legislation. You're also doing that risk assessment. So that can take anywhere between, I would say, 2 to 3 months to be doing. And also, the reason why that stage takes a little bit longer is because we're also talking about engaging staff. We want to engage staff throughout this process. And so having their engagement throughout that information gathering stage is definitely very essential. We need to know what their needs are and what they're thinking. So that could, again, be about 2 to 4 months. As we start doing this process, though, the work becomes easier and quicker, so we can do it in a shorter time frame. As for analyzing the information, it all depends on whether or not you do some of this work in-house, or if you have an external provider doing some of this work for you. So we do a little bit in-house, and then we look to a service provider to help us analyze some of this information, and also just to keep that information analysis as neutral as we possibly can. So that could take about 1 to 2 months to do. And then our planning phase, that one's a little simpler, a little quicker. It's about a 1-month period of time, but again, we're sharing that information at the executive and management level, making sure that they're on side with what we want to do. So that can take a little bit of time in scoping out some of those resources and timelines as well. So that's really a collaborative effort between our committee, HR, management, and our executives. Then for our implementation, it really allows us about 1.5 years to implement the work. So that's a good, healthy amount of time to implement the work, I would say. And then, again, we have a bit of time, I would say about a month to evaluate, and then we start the process all over again. So I hope that helped to clarify and answer that question for the audience.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Erika. We really appreciated your very thoughtful responses. I also just noticed that in the chatter, some people mentioned collaborative spaces. So I just want to remind everybody that Collaborative Spaces is an online repository and conversation place for mental health in Canada. This is where people can share mental health information with others and learn from others as they post. Essentially, the more you contribute, the more robust a resource it will be. So there's actually a space made just for workplace and one also just for caregivers. So you can add content, events, and chat about news. You can join us by going to www.mentalhealthcommission.ca, and you can find the information you're looking for there. Now, finally, I just want to take a moment to thank you both, Erika and Lisa, so much for joining us today. I think you've shared some really interesting ideas for workplaces, especially as they continue to improve their organizational culture and structure for their employees. For those of you still with us, I have a few final housekeeping issues. Just a reminder that the July 30th webinar has been canceled, so no webinar next month. Our regularly scheduled monthly workplace webinars will resume in August, so you can stay tuned for details on that. You can register by going to the link on the screen, so please forward this information on to your colleagues and networks. We love to see lots of people join us. So some of you may also be aware that new anti-spam legislation is coming into effect as of July 1st. So if you would like to continue receiving communications from the Commission, and that includes invitations to our webinars, we ask that you take a moment to visit the Commission website and register for our newsletter. When you register, if you take a moment and indicate that you're interested in workplace, we'll be sure to continue sending you invites to the webinars. And finally, I ask that you guys take the time to fill out the survey that pops up on your screen as you exit the webinar. It'll help inform the topics that we do in the future. And I also encourage everyone to ask questions before the next webinar. Please feel free to email us directly. We always love your participation. So the PowerPoint presentation and future presentations will be posted as PDFs for free on our website in both English and French. The English recording will also be available on the Commission's YouTube channel. So if you missed it or you want to share this with a colleague, that information will be available to you. I just want to thank everybody again, our hosts and all of our participants, for coming out and sharing how the Commission implemented our strategy. And for those of you that are still with us, I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thanks so much.